For today's main topic, I was originally thinking I was going to do something on sinking funds and doing a deep dive into how sinking funds work. But ultimately, the episode that I did on budgeting, the nuts and bolts of budgeting, more than accounts for how to deal with a sinking fund. So I thought it would be more appropriate and more inspiring to go through some success stories. Since, we just talked about success, this is more than appropriate to go through some success stories of people who have successfully, in their mind, in their words, in their feelings, in their heart, gone through budgeting and saving. And I figured we could learn from these stories. I haven't read any of these stories yet. I'm going to be reading them for the first time here on the podcast. And these stories come from an article from Mint. It's not anything that I'm sponsored by. This article is called "They Did It, and So Can You: 4 Real-Life Budget Success Stories." It's written by Mary Ayres, and it came out in 2014, but was updated in December of 2020. The article begins, "Once you find yourself in a financial hole, it's hard to climb out of it. In fact, you usually end up digging deeper and deeper when you do. Where do you start? What do you focus on? And how do you avoid making things worse for yourself? As difficult as transforming your financial situation can be, it's not impossible. Many have done it, and they didn't need to make millions on the stock market or build a multi-billion-dollar business to do so. No, these are people just like us, with limited funds, no expert knowledge of the stock market, and a whole bunch of bills that need paying off. Here are some awesome success stories that prove anybody with a little hard work and preparation can climb completely out of that hole and fill it with dirt so they never have to fall into it again." I really like the opening to this article. I like where it's going in it. They didn't use the word debt, but digging yourself in a financial hole implies debt. We'll see if the stories reflect a debt-free journey followed by building a mountain of savings. So first is Chrissy Schwab's experience with Mint.com. Chrissy was having trouble keeping track of her expenses, especially the part where every little swipe of her debit card meant another set of numbers to remember. Keeping track of every receipt and entering every purchase into Excel got real tiresome real fast. Luckily for her, she discovered Mint.com's budgeting setup system, again, not sponsored, where all you need to do is enter your basic financial information, bank account, monthly bills, loans, income, etc., and the site configures the rest, telling you how much you should have left over at the end of each month and offering helpful guides as to how your spending compares to others. Okay, when it comes to the comparison thing, we aren't here to play a comparison game with our finances. I've always found that playing a comparison game or using money as a financial scorecard is a thief to joy, because for someone who's doing better than I am financially, I might look at what they're doing and go, man, I wish I could be doing that well, or I must be failing. I'm not doing as well as I could. There's always going to be someone out there who's doing better, and there's always going to be someone out there who's able to cut spending beyond what it is that you're doing. There are going to be ridiculous examples on the extremes of both ends: income, spending, saving, everything. So don't worry too much about the average. Average and normal is broke. We want to be doing better than average, don't get me wrong, but we don't want to get into a comparison game when it comes to other people's financial lives and our own. The other thing I should mention here is they plug their budgeting app. The Mint budgeting app is especially helpful for someone who doesn't like doing those updates. I mentioned it in the budget tip. If you update every week and you have groceries every week, it's important to know how much is left in your budget. And if that's something that becomes challenging and it increases the friction between you and successful budgeting so much that you just give up on it or burn out on it, well, something that actually takes your transaction straight from your bank account and moves it into the budget so that it automatically updates, well, that can be really helpful. Every dollar, Dave Ramsey's budgeting app, does something similar, but for his, I think you need a paid subscription, at least at the time of this recording, in order to get the automatic moving things over from your bank account. And for Mint, I believe that functionality is completely free. One last thing before we move on. The article here, the story says that Mint in particular is going to let you know how much extra income you have or discretionary money you might have after all of your needs are met. Well, if you leave it as just that and you leave it as slushy, this is not a zero-based budget because not every dollar is assigned a mission. And I believe as your HopeFilled financial coach that having a zero-based budget is the best way to pursue frugal planning where opportunity cost becomes automatically intuitive. Moving on with the article. Thanks to Mint's expert organization for her financial situation, Chrissy ended up saving thousands of dollars, streamlining her spending so virtually all of her bills get paid off in one paycheck, leaving several more checks a month free to help her live a life rather than simply pay for one. Other than the fact that they're heavily plugging their own product here, it's a good example of how someone can take a budget, engage with the plan, and see on the other side of it happiness, contentment, joy, control, success. Let's move on to the second story. How Carrie paid off a $50,000 debt in under 3 years. That's pretty impressive. Carrie of Pocket Your Dollars was over $50,000 in debt. In 2.5 years, she had paid her entire debt off, even while being laid off from her job. Wow. Her secret weapon, coupons. She and her family meticulously clipped coupons, but not just any coupons. Too often, people buy up everything that has a coupon attached, even if they don't need it. And then they wonder why they aren't saving any money. Carrie instead focused on necessities, especially ones already on sale, and found herself saving a lot of money very quickly. The great thing is, even if you don't buy a newspaper anymore, kids ask your parents if the term newspaper confuses you. There are plenty of online coupons that you can take advantage of. Just find the ones that help you most, print them out, and get to saving. The article does a good job calling it out. There's the function in your brain, transaction utility, where you feel like you're getting a deal or a discount, and it makes you so much more likely to pursue buying that item where the transaction utility is being applied, whether it's a real deal or not. And coupons are a double-edged sword. Yeah, they can help you save a great deal of money if you do them intentionally. My mother was a great couponer. I remember growing up, she had a series of boxes. There were these black rectangle boxes. She had them above her little desk just off of the kitchen. They were on a shelf and they were stacked up and they had dates on them. They had months and years on them. What she had done is she goes through and she was clipping all the coupons and organizing them by expiration date. Inside the box, I think she had some sort of organizational system so she could see things that were on need, things that were wants, things that she needed to buy regularly, and things that were probably less regular. And she would only buy that particular item, just like Carrie here, if that item was on sale and she had a coupon. And that's how she was able to support feeding me and my younger siblings back when my dad wasn't making as much as he was making now. Let's move on to the next story. Jeff learns the middle way method of saving money. Jeff was having trouble balancing his budget and saving any money. He tried micromanaging every little penny and found it too confusing. He then tried a laissez-faire approach, which is more laissez-faire than anything, as he stopped keeping track of anything he spent at all. Not shockingly, he lost control quite quickly. Finally, Jeff discovered a happy medium, the balanced money formula, championed by the website Get Rich Slow. I might have to check that website out in the future. This middle-of-the-road approach doesn't keep track of every last tiny thing you do with your money, but it does structure your budget in such a way that ideally less than half of your money would go toward needs, bills, food, gas, etc. The remaining half would be split between things you want, toys, games, trips, music, electronics, etc., and savings for the future. Adhering to this method helped Jeff finally cut down on expenses and start saving money. And it could very well work for you too. So this one also reminds me of last week's podcast episode where we talked about I think it was 50-30-20 budgeting method and the 80-20 budgeting method, where they give you guidelines that about half of your budget should go towards your necessities, what you need to live on, and then 30% goes to your lifestyle, your wants, your toys, the stuff that you just want. And then the rest, the 20%, goes to paying off debt or saving. And those guidelines can help you if you feel that you're too much on the spendy side or the saving side. It is possible to be so gung-ho with saving that you feel like you can't live today. If saving is just like natural to you and you're driving really, really hard at it, you might be sacrificing just experiencing everyday life for the sake of saving, and that might not be healthy. On the contrary, you might be spending so much, you might just be consuming everything and not feel like you have any savings muscles. And you need to develop your relationship with money so that saving is something that is a little bit more natural, so that saving is at least something that you desire naturally. In this particular instance, they said that you're not tracking everything. And while it's true you don't have to track absolutely everything, I still think it's important to, at least early on, pursue a zero-based budget where you do track everything and you don't give yourself any wiggle room for doubt or confusion. A zero-based budget can give you a lot of clarity. If you're a nerd with money, then I think that contentment with what you have, contentment with what your plan is, peace with your budget, can really come from assigning every dollar a mission. It also might make tax season a little bit easier if you know what happened to everything and that you don't have to go tracking it down later. Let's move on to the last story. The last one is for Doug. Doug knew nothing of finance and still retired early. After having a child, former career military man Doug decided he needed to spend less time working and more time fathering. This would mean less income and more saving. So, despite admitting to not having a lot of financial savvy and making a ton of mistakes along the way, Doug and his wife managed to save in every way imaginable. They embraced any form of free entertainment, such as the beach or library, and cut out as much needless spending as they could. Any home improvement or maintenance project they could handle themselves, they tackled. Finally, after decades of scrimping and saving, as well as finally finding a portfolio that worked for him, Doug took early retirement and has never looked back. He fills his day with fun and, while he absolutely could take a job just about anywhere, he chooses not to. He'd rather have fun, and thanks to finding a financial solution that worked for him, he absolutely can. This goes back to what I highlighted in episode 10 of the HopeFilled Financial Podcast. Your saving is the opposite of going into debt. When you're saving, you're buying your future back. You're buying yourself freedom of choice. You don't work because you have to. You work because you want to. And you do the work that matters to you. And in this case, Doug wanted to be a dad. He wanted to be a father. He wanted to be spending more time engaging with his child. He wanted to be there for them as they were growing up, more so than he could if he were a career man. And there's nothing wrong with that, even if it means that he doesn't have more money. He doesn't have the mountain of money where he can afford anything that he might want. He recognizes that his pathos, his core, his drive, his being, his calling, his purpose was to be a dad, not to be rich. And in recognizing his calling, in recognizing his purpose in life as being something that was separate from money but still involved healthy financial management, he was able to go from, I don't know what I'm doing with this money thing, but pursuing his calling drove him to being frugal. It drove him to building a plan where he only worked when he wanted to, and to saving so he could buy back his future and spend so much more time being a dad than hustle culture will have us believe we can. I think this is something that's downright beautiful, and I think it's something that we can't do unless we're pursuing a debt-free future. I don't think this is something that's achievable by accident. I think this is something that needs an intentional plan. I think this is something that you need to say, I'm going to do this. I think any major savings goal in the future, including planning and saving for retirement, involves an intentional plan. Nobody succeeds by accident. Let me give you an example. If you're an athlete or you like watching sports on TV, let's just use football as an example, and you're considering the Super Bowl, right? The biggest game of the season, and the two teams are coming together. Nobody on either team is going to win that Super Bowl by accident. There is a plan. There are people who are dedicated to planning and coordinating the offense and the defense, coming up with the game plan, coming up with the plays. There is a plan for so many little intimate details in the game. And in order to win the Super Bowl, you need to be not only an excellent athlete, but you need to be excellent at intentionally executing a plan, understanding it from the inside out, and following through with it. And the same is so very true with money. So very true. When we have a budget, when we have a written plan, we can have a direction to what it is that our definition of success entails. There's more to life than just having money for the sake of money and the sake of consumerism. What is it that gets you out of bed? What is it that drives your purpose? What is your calling? What in your heart would you do if you didn't need to make money? And when you know the answers to those questions, even if budgeting and financial planning isn't your passion, it gives you the drive, just like Doug, to follow through on your calling and make it a reality. He retired early. In today's culture, we just expect that we work and we work and we work and we work. And we work 40, 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. And it's just normal. And that's the way it is. And you come home and you do it all over again, over and over and over. And at the end of your life, you're like, hey, man, I really wish I could have done more X. In Doug's case, it would have been, I really wish I could have spent more time with my son. I really wish I could have spent more time being a dad. And instead of, going through with the herd and going to work every day and cranking it for the sake of money, trading his life for money, he saved, bought his future back, had a budget, had an intentional plan, and achieved what I would call success. These stories prove once and for all that if you truly want to save money, balance your budget, climb out of debt, and possibly retire early, then you absolutely can. It just takes a little work, a lot of focus, and a ton of dedication. And while your story will ultimately be different than the ones we just read, it's very possible that one or more of their tricks could work for you. So give it a shot. The thousands of extra dollars in your bank account will thank you. On the whole, I think those were pretty inspiring stories, and I think they gave us some good examples for us to talk about. Next week, we're going to continue our series on budgeting, and specifically, we're going to be talking about the budget meeting. This is going to be very valuable information if you're married and you're trying to figure out, how do we do this budgeting thing as a couple? How do we communicate about budgeting in marriage? We're going to cover the married couples budget meeting in depth. Until then, until next Tuesday, budget bravely and enjoy your hope-filled financial future.